multi-billion-dollar contract to help build the UK's first carbon capture factory. Plus, getting in the festive spirit. We'll be speaking to these rather cheery people at the company behind supplying offices with more Christmas trees than ever before. Very good morning and welcome to Business Live on this Wednesday with me, Darren McCaffrey. We're going to begin in Westminster, where dozens of farmers have arrived in their tractors in protests over changes to inheritance tax. They're angry about the tax plans announced by the Chancellor in her budget in October. That is that from April 2026, inherited agricultural assets worth more than £1 million, which are currently exempt, will be liable to be taxed at 20%. Well, let's speak to one of those who's at that protest today. Spencer Campbell is a freelance farmer and joins me now live. Spencer, very good morning to you. I suppose the big question is, why are you there? Why do you feel the need to protest?
I'm here today because this is my future. I live and breathe to farm every day, and I don't want to lose that. Everything I do in my life revolves around the weather and what we're doing on the farm. And I'm here today because I want to support the farmers who this will affect directly. I'm a self-employed farmhand, so I'll never inherit a farm, but I'm worried about losing my future job.
And Spencer, you know, there'll be a lot of people who'll be very sympathetic to that. Why do you think this is going to have an impact on your future? Do you simply feel that this is an industry, the farming industry in Britain, could disappear?
Absolutely. I've already lost one job because of this. They just can't afford to pay me. I don't ask for much. You know, I'm on about £10 an hour, which is minimum wage for my age, from April. And it's awful, really. Every generation, we're going to be whittling away at farms. There's going to be less farm each year. And we just can't have that. You know, 10 acres might not sound like a lot of land, but that's 40 tonnes of wheat every year that we're losing to development.
But Spencer, isn't the problem here actually not taxation? I mean, maybe this is actually part of the thing when it comes to these protests. It's about the fact that farmers aren't paid a decent amount of money for the food they produce, and that actually farming land is being bought up by people who want to actually avoid tax.
Yes, it's, you know, inheritance tax is a cruel tax to anyone, but it's just, it's another nail in the coffin, really. There isn't the money there to pay this off. You know, for one of the farms I work on is a 500-acre farm. That's worth about £8 million. That doesn't mean there's £8 million sat in the bank account for any expense. That's land which has been bought over generations and generations. And we can't lose that, and at this rate we're going to. You know, it's scary times, it really is.
But in some ways, the people who would defend this decision would say you don't have to worry about that. There's a thing called the 7-year rule in this country. If a farmer wants to hand his farm over to his children, he simply does that 7 years before he thinks he may well die, and that means that there'll be no inheritance tax.
Sorry, I didn't hear that very well, sorry.
All I'm saying is that you can still pass on farms without paying inheritance tax. What I'm trying to get at here is, I get the impression the concern of you and other farmers isn't really necessarily about this tax in general. It's just that farming has been under pressure for decades for a whole range of different issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. This inheritance tax isn't, it's another nail in the coffin, as I said earlier. You know, it's another attack on us. Everywhere we look, we're getting foreign imports, cheaper produce coming into this country, and we can't produce to that standard. You know, we have the highest welfare standards in the world. So, for a reference, in a shed where we might have 8 cows, another country may have 25 cows. So their cost per shed, I guess, is much lower, so they can produce meat cheaper than we can. And we're then left in a predicament where, what do? You know, we can't produce food cheaper, but supermarkets are buying their meat rather than our meat. How do we tackle that?
So would your message then Spencer B, to the people watching this programme is, frankly, we all just have to pay more money for the food that we eat if we want sustainable farming in this country.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the thing is we want the best produce we can have. We've got the perfect weather here to grow good, sustainable arable crops and livestock. So why aren't we? You know, a friend of mine says he produces potatoes not far from where I live, and he can sell his potatoes to Spain for more money than he can in this country. Where's the sense in that? In a time where...
Yeah, I was just going to say briefly, though...
In a time...
Sorry, there is a little delay on the line, which is always a little annoying with these things.
Yes,
but I was
no worries.
just going to end by talking about your future. I think you're only 19 years old. I assume this is an industry, you know, farming is your passion. You want to do, you know, for decades to come. Do you honestly think that might not be possible?
Absolutely, 100%. Every year we're losing land. You know, every year, well, we're feeding more people than ever fed before. Sorry, there's a tractor just coming behind the camera. You know, we're feeding more people than we've ever fed before on less acres than we've ever farmed before.
OK, Spencer, thank you very much for your time this morning. As you can see there, quite a lot of tractors trundling down Whitehall, hundreds of farmers descending to protest against the inheritance tax. As I say, you also get the sense that this is a frustration that has built up in the farming community over the last decades about large supermarkets, the price that they can charge for food. It will be interesting to see whether this gets raised at Prime Minister's Question Time that we're expecting at midday, and we'll have coverage of that, of course, here on Sky News. And even Santa Claus, it seems, has turned up to protest too. OK, let's talk about carbon capture, because the UK's first ever full-scale carbon capture power station has been signed off today. The multi-billion-pound project has been in the works for close to 20 years. The facilities will be built on Teesside, with the construction due to begin next year. Well, let's speak to Arbel van Herwarden, who is from GE Vernova, which has been awarded one of those contracts. Arbel, very good morning to you. I think the first question really should be, what is carbon capture? Because there'll be a lot of people watching who don't quite understand what it actually is.
Yes, good morning, Darren. Thank you. Yes, carbon capture is simply technology that can be applied to capture the carbon from exhaust gases, and then, in this case, transport and store it safely under the seabed in underground caverns. And the project in question here is the first gas-fired power station where this carbon technology will be applied on such a large scale, in fact.
And this is a big aim of this government, but it is primarily to help tackle climate change.
Yes, I think the UK government has set a clear goal of reaching net zero by 2050, and there are many technologies that can be applied in getting us there, but carbon capture is one of the technologies that we believe make sense, and ultimately it helps with enhancing the energy security and driving economic growth in this case as well. But gas-fired power stations with carbon capture are part of that solution ultimately, yes.
What would you say to those critics who would look at £22 billion? It's a lot of money. Yes, it's going to create some jobs. But what it does mean is, you know, taxation, if you like, going towards something that money could be spent elsewhere. Why do you think this is so necessary, this investment?
Well, I think ultimately there are many technologies that need to be applied, and as I said, carbon capture is part of the solution. GE Vernova supplies various technologies. We're also big in wind energy, as you may know. But ultimately, here gas-fired generation is needed for the country. Is needed to provide the stable and dispatchable power generation that we need here in the UK. And by applying the carbon capture, we can have a low carbon power generation plant that helps meet those goals in the end.
And as I say, it's going to create 2,000 jobs, and it is in Teesside and Merseyside. Are you confident that you'll be able to, recruit and retain the staffing that you'll need in those parts of the country?
Yeah, so this will be built at a T-site on the former steel site. And in fact, we are working together with our partner Technip Energies to construct this plant over the next few years. And T-site is a large industrial site, as you may know, and there are many local contractors that will be supporting the construction of this plant. I think we're talking about up to 3,000 construction jobs and then another 1,000 jobs or so annually during the ongoing operation and maintenance of this large plant going forward. Yeah.
And just very finally, what impact is this going to have, not necessarily economically, but in terms of the carbon that will be captured? What impact is that going to make to Britain's target of net zero?
Yeah, so this project specifically is aiming to capture up to 2 million tons of CO2 a year, which is obviously quite a lot. It should capture about 96% of the exhaust gases from this gas-fired power plant. The key point here is this is the world's first. So we're hoping that by setting this example, further projects will follow also in the UK and ultimately in other countries around the world. But this will be the first milestone in demonstrating and proving this technology on such a large scale, which will then hopefully open the way for further projects to come and will help the UK meet its targets by 2050.
OK, Obel van Herder-Warden, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
OK, let's bring you up to date with some of the rest of today's business news now. And a group of current and former Vodafone franchisers are suing the company over alleged cuts to their commission payments and remuneration. Many of the 61 claimants, who are seeking over £120 million, says the actions have caused them and their families severe financial and personal distress, including reaching the edge of bankruptcy. Vodafone said they have sought to rectify the issues and believe they've treated the franchisers fairly. A $10 billion takeover bid for one of America's biggest pharmacy chains looks set to trigger a fresh auction for Boots here, the chemist in the UK. The news broke first this morning by our city editor, Mark Kleiman, that a partner equity firm is expected to seek separate ownership for Boots if it succeeds in taking Walgreens' Boots alliance. Boots, of course, celebrated its 175th anniversary this year. And rail users this festive period may want to check before they travel. Strike actions between Avanti West Coast services have been announced on the 22nd, 23rd and 29th of December. Train managers belonging to the RMT union are walking out of rest day working arrangements. And you can get more on that and indeed why the euro is at a low against the pounds. Why that all is in our money blog today. Just scan the QR code that's on your screen right now. Now, next, we're going to talk about Christmas trees and office Christmas trees. We have actually got one in this office. It's been sneaking in the corner, hence why you've not been able to see it. But because apparently more Christmas trees are being sold than ever before, particularly to offices. And it is about trying to bring some festive joy, I think, to the places we work. So what's brought this sudden jump in sales compared to last year? Let's speak to David Merrill. He is Operations Director at Pines and Needles. A very good morning to you. Why then? Why are Christmas tree sales, particularly to offices, at an all-time high?
Yeah, good morning, Darren. I think a lot more people being back in the offices now, sort of the fun and enjoyment of being in the office with your colleagues and sort of made people want to make their offices more Christmas. We definitely saw a drop after COVID. And now we have a lot more people having their Christmas parties, actually making a thing of it. I'm actually at our lovely store here in Battersea Park, and we have offices call us and they send their teams down to pick up their trees. And we've had some fantastic social media videos of people picking up their tree, filming it as they take it back to the office and then decorating it in the office also. And really making a good fun thing of having the trees up in the office and everyone back in the office is enjoying Christmas drinks and Christmas cheer again, I think.
And David, maybe this is a little bit academic in a sense. Has there ever been research into whether, having a bit of festive joy in the form of a Christmas tree in the office, boost productivity or workplace wellness?
I'm not sure if there's ever been any specific research into it, but I can guarantee from all of the interaction we have with our customers that return year on year, they very much look forward to ordering their Christmas tree again every year. We have a delivery team that go out and decorate trees around London every year in offices all over the place. And we get lots and lots of reports back saying how much joy it brings to the office and just brings everyone together like Christmas should, right?
Indeed, and I don't know who your helper is in the background there, but incredibly good saw action going on in the back of your interview right now.
Yeah.
David, there's always going to be a question about artificial trees versus real trees. What is better? What's more sustainable? Now, you clearly sell real Christmas trees. Why are they more sustainable, given the fact that they have to be chopped down and they get chucked away every Christmas when it's over?
Yeah, of course. So that's a question I answer fairly regularly, and it sort of falls hand in hand with the farmers you've been speaking to today. We are a farming business. We grow our trees ourselves in Scotland. As you can see, the amazing staff behind us are in their kilts and feeling Christmassy, but showing that we are from the Scottish Highlands. All of our trees are grown there, brought down from our harvest. So much like any other crop that you buy in the supermarket, food, whatever that may be, we grow them, we harvest them, we bring them down to London, we distribute them to our 40 stores across London as well as online. And at the end, we collect our trees again, we chip them. As I said, I'm in Battersea Park. This year, we've actually donated some trees to Battersea Park Zoo. They will then, at the end of the season, feed those trees to the goats. We will chip all of our return trees and we actually dish them out to Battersea Park Zoo, London Zoo, Kew Gardens to mulch their plants. It really is a sustainable process.
Very good indeed. And just finally, David, have you noticed that businesses and people are essentially putting up trees earlier and earlier? I have to say, when I was growing up as a kid, my mum would probably put up a Christmas tree around now. I put mine up on December 1st. It does feel that Christmas is creeping earlier and earlier every year.
Yeah, certainly. So we open our stores sort of mid-November, around the 18th of November this year. We have lots of customers coming wanting them up. We offer a lot of advice in store of how to keep your tree good until Christmas Day. At the end of the day, everyone wants their tree still to look beautiful on Christmas Day. So watering your tree, keeping it out of a warm environment. And as long as you can do those things, you really can end up with a beautiful tree from middle to end of November all the way through to after Christmas.
OK, well, I'll hold you to that. I don't want my baubles falling off before we get to Christmas Day. That's my main concern in life, it must be said at the moment. David,
well, keep that tree watered and you'll be fine.
I know. I didn't know you had genuinely didn't know you had to water a tree until I bought one this year and they said you should put some water in the basement. So you do learn something. Every day's a school day, as they say. David.
Indeed.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Take
David
care.
Merrill there and his Christmas helpers in the background. Thank you. You're watching Business Live here on Sky News. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, we're going to be looking at the markets. The FTSE up just a fraction this morning. The details after this quick commercial break.
We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers. It was built as a top-secret command centre.
Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
A show of military might and menace.
Courage, bravery and sacrifice will win the day.
It's a new subject. They'll learn about combat drones and some how to handle a Kalashnikov.
The Kremlin continues to put forward its own version of events, both present and past.
There's no mention of the fact that Russia invaded its neighbour. That's rewriting history, isn't it?
Now we have to read it carefully.
Vladimir Putin put forward his plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, telling Kiev, pull out of your eastern territories and the war will end. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world?
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I can't answer questions that stupid.
I've watched Vladimir Putin attempt to create a new world order.
The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West.
Ambassador, I wonder, shall we have a quick word for Sky News?
Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine?
Swedish media, oh my God, you're not afraid of being here.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, who was first on display.
Russia says Evan Gershkovich was caught red-handed, but has never produced any evidence to back that up. Sky News. Get the full story first.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
This is the game changer seat. Look, it even comes with binoculars. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Very welcome back. Let's have a look at the markets on this Wednesday morning. And Asia-Pacific stocks were mixed last night after major Wall Street benchmarks declined ahead of key inflation data that could influence the Federal Reserve's interest rate decision. In Europe, markets have opened to a choppy session as traders digest disappointing corporate updates and await, of course, US inflation data, which we'll be covering a little later on in the show at 4:30 this afternoon. Here in London, the FTSE, as I said, pretty much unchanged. Let's have a look at the currencies. Interesting that the pound has reached an 8-year high against the euro. Down just a little, though, but it is doing, and has been doing over the last couple of months, quite well. And oil's ticked up a little at 72.83. OK, let's talk to Emma Wall, head of platform investments at Hargreaves Lansdowne. Emma, very good morning to you. Can we just talk about the euro first? It has been sliding quite a lot against sterling and the dollar for the last couple of months. Why?
It has. This is very much both an economic and in turn an interest rate story, which is one and the same. So the ECB is expected to cut rates tomorrow. That's pretty much baked in. The only thing that markets are divided on is whether they'll cut 50 basis points, so 0.5%, or 25 basis points, so 0.25%. As we know from the issues in France and indeed Germany, the euro region has been struggling with growth, and that's really reflected in the currency. In short, higher interest rates attracts foreign investment, attracts people buying your bonds, and therefore is good for your currency. And so where we've got this discrepancy of the ECB looking like they're very much going to cut tomorrow, the Fed potentially cutting next month, depending on the CPI print we're going to have later today. And here in the UK, the Bank of England very much on a hold trajectory for interest rates. What started as actually those three major central banks moving in unison, where it was sort of September. Now that we're starting to see those differences, it's being reflected in the currency.
Let's talk about the other big story today, and that is inflation. We're expecting to get the numbers a little later on, and this is quite key, I think, to lots of the mood in the markets, isn't it?
Yeah, everybody is looking at that CPI print in the US. And the reason why it's so important is it will very much be the last piece of major data before the Fed makes its decision on interest rates in December. So the market is very much expecting CPI to come in at 2.7. That's a little bit up on the previous month. It was 2.6% in October. If CPI comes in as expected at 2.7 or below, although that's unlikely, then the expectation is around 85% expectation in the market that the Fed will cut interest rates in December, and that will be positive for the market. Some of it's already priced in, but we expect to see a bit of a Santa rally, that bump that what we call when the market rises in December. However, if it comes in too hot, above that 2.7 mark, then we will not see any change in the Fed, because there's this very much data-driven, cautious outlook that we're seeing, both from the Fed and indeed from the Bank of England on this side of the pond, being very data-driven about their interest rate decisions. But all eyes on that CPI print, which is coming out around 1:30 in the afternoon.
Emma, you flagged a really interesting story today, apparently from Lord Spencer, who's saying that UK bosses of companies should be paid like football stars. Many would look at the remuneration of some bosses in the UK and suggest that already happens.
Yeah, so it's a slightly self-serving statement, but we'll leave that to one side for the moment. And the average FTSE 100 boss is paid around £4 million a year, which sounds like an astronomical amount of money to most people. But if you compare it to the average pay of a top executive in America, say of the S&P 500, that's around $16 million. So taking apart, the currency fluctuations is around 4 times higher. And the reason why this is quite an interesting story is actually because of the context. Now, pay is often cited as one of the reasons why we have a brain drain from the UK to the US. And why we see so many businesses choosing to IPO in the US or indeed move their private businesses to the US is to do with things like attracting talent, retaining talent. Increasingly, obviously, there's also a question around regulation and how we make the City of London a more attractive place to list your business and do business. But the pay piece is an important part. Now, under the last government, we did see the bankers' bonuses cap lifted. So we have had some restrictions lifted within financial services. But across the piece, it is the truth that execs in the UK are paid significantly less than execs in the US. And when it comes to making the UK a more attractive place to do business, that is a component part.
OK, Emma, as always, really appreciate your analysis this morning. Emma Wall there live for us. Thank you very much indeed. OK, that's it from me on Business Live for the time being. Of course, we're back at 4:30 this afternoon. Those protests, as you can still see, still taking place in Westminster. Hundreds of farmers gathering there. But up next, it is Prime Minister's question time. In the Commons, Keir Starmer against Kemi Badenoch. Will farmers come up? I'm sure the situation in Syria will. Join Jane Secker for that live from Westminster at midday. I'll be back this afternoon. PMQs is up next. Stay tuned.